Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the next time block of the ABLE 2021 conference. You are in the session titled Student Choice in ePortfolio Platforms, Problematic or an Opportunity for Inclusion. And so just a couple minor details to go over. We have turned on the Zoom captions for anyone who chooses to use them. If you want to turn them on at the bottom of the Zoom window, you'll see either a transcript or closed caption button where you can choose show transcript from the list that occurs when you click it. We are encouraging everyone to pose questions in the chat. This is a conversation session, so there will also be, if Steve and Mark are okay with it, opportunities for people to turn on their mic and speak. But we definitely want to encourage participation. And so I will hand it over to Mark Ertel and Steve Fallowfield from IUPUI and let them lead the show.
Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming in. As stated, it is meant to be conversational. So we're not going to be doing a presentation. We want to hear from you. We'd like to hear from you, your thoughts, your experiences. And if there's any way that we can help you with anything around your ePortfolio experience, we'd love to. Just briefly, introductions. I'm Steve Fallowfield. I'm a lecturer in the Department of Kinesiology at Indiana University, Purdue University in Indianapolis. And I'm part of a fabulous team, and I hope that they can introduce themselves as well.
Hey everybody, my name is Mark Ertel. I chair the Department of Kinesiology, and along with Steve, the awesome team that we've been a part of for the last few years in standing up our department-wide ePortfolio project are with us today, and we would love for them to unmute and introduce themselves, because after we get our introductions done, we'll go back to Steve for a couple prompts, but really the idea of this hopefully provocative title, giving choice, because I think for some people that's kind of a novel idea. Others it makes sense, is to really dialogue and we can share the good, the bad, the ugly. We'd love to hear about the good, the bad, the ugly, or questions, concerns, or contributions. But I'd also like to, Lisa and Rachel.
Hi, I'm Lisa Angermeyer, and I'm a faculty member in the Department of Kinesiology at IUPUI. I also coordinate our first year experience in our school, and I also work with that at the campus level. So we're excited to be here, and I'm excited to be part of the conversation.
Hi, I'm Rachel Swinford, also a faculty member in kinesiology, and been part of this team of the four of us since 2016 when we originally piloted our program.
Great. All right. Well, let's get started. I put questions in the chat, and I'm going to activate them, but I'll ask them verbally too. And please, if you would like just to verbally talk about your experiences with these two prompts, or if you'd rather do the chat, that's fine with us either way. Can you think of some benefits of letting students choose their ePortfolio platforms? If you can think of any of those, let's start with that. Saves time trying to learn technology, meets them where they are, great. They might already be familiar with the platform and have a start, yes.
Could you expand a little bit on the meets them where they are, if you don't mind?
A little bit along the lines of what Mary brought up, especially for returning students who may not be as comfortable or used to technology. If they've either adopted something and not have to learn another platform, that's often a helpful, or giving them an opportunity to seek maybe a platform that doesn't require as much effort. I know there are some ePortfolio platforms that have a lot of bells and whistles, but it also requires a lot of steep learning curve. So helping all of our students, and I would say maybe one more would be for the students who may be using their primary device as their smartphone, platforms that are mobile friendly and increases the equity of the whole endeavor.
Thank you.
Fabulous. having listed those, are there any limitations, or what are the limitations in your experiences of letting the students choose versus having one platform in your courses or in your usage? Assessment, yes, can be tricky.
Yeah, my answer is longer, so maybe I'll just say it out
Sure.
loud. I mean, I've not yet taught with ePortfolios, but I've taught with enough technology to know that if your students are using a lot of different platforms, it can be tricky for you to actually learn how to navigate those platforms yourself if you're not familiar with them, and then evaluate fairly. So you can spend a lot of your own time, less time sort of with the students and more time actually trying to figure out how to evaluate their work.
Great. Using multiple platforms can be like herding cats. It also requires focusing more on the process than the product. Okay.
Yeah, at SF State, because we were a central group working with a number of departments across the campus, we had, I think, 10 different platforms being used at the department level or program level. And so we chose to really focus our trainings for faculty and students on collect, select, reflect, build, and publish. So collect your artifacts, select which ones are appropriate for the audience you're trying to reach, reflect on it, and help those audience members see the connections between themselves and what they're viewing, and then build it out and publish it. And by having that as our framework, rather than here are the different tools or features of this particular tool, at least there was some centralizing force that helped students who got caught in between and ended up having to make multiple portfolios because they were maybe double majors or in general education courses forced to use multiple tools. And so
Yeah, logistics. Clearly logistics, hurdles with learning management systems that you may have can all be issues with that. Mark, can you talk about maybe how our team kind of evolved in choosing to let students choose, and maybe from that perspective and roll from there?
Sure. So to be clear with everybody, when we started this, I think everyone on the team would agree, after the first year we rolled it out, we were largely unsuccessful, right? It didn't go, we had these expectations of what it was for, how students would view it, how they'd use it, and those just didn't get met, those expectations. So we took it upon ourselves to take a pause, take a step back, and get professionally developed. Call people in that knew about this more than we did, go to a conference, ABLE, that was one of them. And it was really enlightening for us on a lot of different levels and perhaps for different reasons. So what we did is when we took stock of what we did and why it didn't work, we wanted to make sure the next time we rolled this out, we took account of things. So there's two things. One directly relates to this session. Another one's loosely related, but it informs it. Our first attempt at this was product-based, externally facing. This is going to be something to get a job, to show, to market, to sell. And the other one was use this platform. So when we look back, we went to the ABLE conference, and for me, the epiphany I had, and this was in Portland, the epiphany I had was listening to the international perspective talk about this, using this as a process for learning, to anchor learning, to document learning, to develop, and Rachel's coined this term, reflective practitioners within our circle, coined it within our circle. And we realized, wait a minute, if it's going to be a process, then they need to be motivated. We didn't want this to be a checkbox, do it, get a grade, how many points. Then they need to own it. And we all know, learning science 101, intrinsic motivation 101, autonomy, relatedness, competence. Autonomy is the ability to make decisions. So the most fundamental decision we thought we could give our students to own this, to be intrinsically motivated to engage in this, is to give them the choice of the platform. What are they familiar with? And someone had asked the other day in a separate conversation here at Able, well, how can they troubleshoot? And I think we can all agree if a student is already using a technology, they're going to be pretty savvy at that. So we didn't worry about different platforms. They can get themselves out of or into a situation on their own. We didn't worry about supporting the technical support. They would have done that de facto by their choice. So Steve, when I hear you asking the question, I would invite the audience to consider, we took this from a intrinsic motivation home base, learning sciences 101, get them excited, give them ownership. Now, let me also pique the interest a little bit afterward. We didn't stop there. We give them ownership in a lot of things, how they reflect, the types of reflections. And I think that that's really supports this platform too, or the platform selection. They can upload videos, they can write narratives, they can do a ton of things. So I think that the essence of what we've done is we've tried to excite students and instill a sense of ownership. So it's not something we have to assign and extrinsically motivate, that it'll foster some of their thoughts. So hopefully, Steve, that might have addressed what you were coming at. If not, let me know. Or any of you weigh in. You were all at the party with me. So,
Well, hearing from those that are attending, what are your experiences with choice or certain platforms or things that you struggle with? Is this something that you've already made up your mind through your experiences? Or I know we've talked in our team in the past, like first year learning experiences, having a set platform for teaching students and the way it worked with the learning management system worked really well. And then as time went on, students maybe grew to try something else. So it's not a judgment. It's just curious about what is your experience with using? Do you all use one platform or do you use multiple? If anybody wants to chime in.
I don't know if it's because I taught preschool for a little while, but I give students limited choice. When you teach preschool, you have to give them 3 options and you have to be okay with whichever option they choose. So I tell the students they can use the one that the campus has adopted, Portfolium. Another one that I like that's free called PathBright. And then I tell the third option is if you are already using another tool for your, because I teach a general ed course. If you're teaching using a portfolio for another program or something like that, just let me know what it is. And if I have any questions, be ready to answer. But the biggest things are when students don't make their portfolio objects public or they don't share them with me. So that's a universal thing. It's not a platform specific thing, but I'm excited to hear more about how you all are just giving them kind of a carte blanche choice.
Rachel or Lisa, do you mind sharing your experiences with either first year seminars or in teaching and some of the observations you made through the years that we've implemented this with choice and platforms?
Sure. Yeah. So in terms of the introductory assignment in the first year seminar course, students are asked to add a couple of different sections to their ePortfolio. The first one kind of being their landing page, and then sometimes it's on the landing page or sometimes a separate tab would be their About Me section. At our campus level, we have a central first year experience office, and they create a Canvas course shell. So we use Canvas for our learning platform. And within that, they have an already created ePortfolio assignment. And that one is set up to use specifically course networking. And if you're not familiar with course networking, it sort of looks like Facebook, in my opinion. But in terms of what I did with that assignment, since we offer the choice, is I left most of the information on here is how you can use course networking. I also put in information about Google Sites because those are the 2 platforms supported by our university UITS. So students can get help 24/7 with those 2 sites. But I also list all of the other ones, such as Pathbright, Weebly, Wix. I'm trying to think of some at Portfolium, some other free ones that are out there that I've seen students use. And then I show examples. So I show examples typically from seniors, because our students start their freshman year and they continue on, and they end up with kind of this learning portfolio they're adding to throughout their entire curriculum. And then they go back their senior year and do a meta reflection, kind of going back and reflecting on their original reflections about that learning, and now looking at it now to see now what do they feel like they got from that. But I would say most of the students this past semester, it's the first semester that I used that first year experience course shell with that assignment. And I would say 50% did end up using course networking, and about 50% ended up using Wix. And it could be because most of the examples I show were Wix. I also talk about, as far as the Wix is a little bit easier than Google Sites in terms of how you set it up. They have a lot of templates for you and things like that. So something that we face is I'm trying to word this the right way. The support at the campus level. So we are maybe not 100% in alignment. Our campus level pushes course networking. So you can call us the black sheep if you want to. We give our students, that choice, because we believe it's about the learning. It's about the process. It doesn't matter what the platform is kind of our take on it.
Rachel, can you talk about the difference that you see at the senior level for the students who use course networking versus another platform? I think that's important.
Yeah, and this is not documented. This is not. This is simply based on this past year. But every student that used course networking at the senior level lost points on the assignment simply because they were missing portions that were required from the assignment that were really difficult to add in that platform. So something that our university did do, we just had a feedback session with Course Networking, the creator, to give them feedback on that. So we're hoping, fingers crossed, that gets a little bit better. But in terms of changing the look, it's very similar, in my opinion, to Portfolium. You can't really personalize it. So you don't see a lot of in my opinion, you don't see a lot of the students' personality come out in something like course networking.
Questions for any of us?
Rachel, can you describe the assignment a little bit more that you have all the first year students do?
Yeah, so we have them create an about me. So I'm trying to think of the reflection prompts. It's, think back about role models in your life that have helped shape you into who you are today. Think about your personal values. Think about your future career goals. Think about your professionalism. And they kind of create a story about who they are. I tell them they can write in the first or the third person, and they put this story of who they are on their homepage with some type of artifact. Sometimes it's like a family picture. Sometimes it's a poem, whatever it might be.
Yeah, that's cool. Thank you.
Some of the things that I've noticed, which was enlightening, is some of the students that did not seem engaged in the coursework, so to speak, in the general assignments or preparing for exams or even discussion in class, seemed to really shine in their expression in their e-portfolios. And I got to know them on a different level where they're coming from. So it was really rewarding. It's one of the things I enjoy assessing more than any assignment, and the class I'm talking about is typically over 100 students. So I don't really get a lot of quality time that I'd like to, knowing the students. And so that's my time to sit down, look through their e-portfolios, and it's amazing how you see the creativity in the e-portfolios and expressing, and some of the stories in their about me, where they came from, and how it reflecting on how it's shaped them and shaped their path and the decision where they're going for their career. So I didn't really see that before I started opening it up and using other platforms, because some of the other platforms, as Rachel said, are a little restrictive in my opinion in observing them. I do want to show you something, if you don't mind. It was kind of interesting to see changes. I'm going to share my screen. Can you see fall semester 2019?
Yes.
Okay, let me see if it's, I can enlarge that a little bit for you. I've been tracking the usage by the different platforms between, I teach an introduction to exercise science class, which are mostly first year students. And then I, along with Rachel, we teach the capstone that are typically seniors ready to graduate. And I track from the fall semester 2019 through 2021. So it's 4 different sections or courses throughout that time period. And as you can see in the large class, the distribution between Wix is one of the platforms they chose overwhelmingly, course networking 14%. And then Google Sites was another one they used, and literally two students chose Weebly, which I'd never heard of before. And then another student chose Squarespace. And a little context of this one, and it kind of supports Baby Our View. I know this student, and looking back at this, and it refreshed a conversation I had with her. She was actually a high school student that was taking the introduction class, and she was she had very low self-efficacy on being there in the first place, and she was very forthcoming about being a little bit intimidated by technology. And I said, hey, guess what? I am too. So after discussing with her and talking to her about, you can use anything you want, anything that you're comfortable with. You're literally communicating with those prompts and reflecting on who you are and where you want to go and what you've learned and what brought you to this path. And you could see her kind of get relieved as we had this discussion, and she picked Squarespace. And that was something that she was not intimidated by. And she was able to communicate well and reflect well on that. So that was always something that hit home with me. And then our seniors, a lower number because it's a smaller class, they overwhelmingly chose Wix through that time. So as we continue to track this data, we'll be able to see the evolution of the incoming students to when they graduate, if those selections change.
That's great that you have that, Steve. I am seeing a question pop up from Cindy in the chat. How do we assess or evaluate the e-portfolios, such as using an analytical or holistic rubric? And what we put together is almost the combination of a checkbook and a rubric. I don't know if there's a technical name for that, but in a sense, there's certain things they have to achieve to get to. So it's not the traditional rubric. It's there's little checks within each section of the rubric, and that seems to work well for us. We also use in class, when we introduce the e-portfolio, a planning worksheet where they kind of draw it out and literally kind of like map what they want it to look like first. That is very similar to the rubric, if that helps.
Anyone have a preference on platforms as in from an instructor side?
I think some of the platforms that are built to be e-portfolios are institution centric. So that's why I like your model, which is very student focused. And there are some tools that try to bridge the gap. Pathbright's one but they've changed hands since Cengage purchased them from the Pathbright original creators. But they had done some neat things where it's very student driven, that students can create as many portfolios as they want for different purposes. So they could have one for academic purposes, one for career bridging, and so on. And they also had APIs that could allow, you could tie it into the gradebook of any of the learning management systems, Moodle or Canvas or D2L or what have you. So I thought, did one of the best jobs of bridging the gap, but they haven't been supporting it as much now that it's changed hands. So I'm looking more toward the model that you all are, where it's less important for me to have back-end functionality and more important that students are comfortable using the tool and that it's able to basically just complete the tasks that we set for them.
Yeah, and I think that-
Or Weebly. All right, go ahead, Rachel.
I was going to say, I think that's a big takeaway is, what is the purpose? And the purpose is documenting learning. For us, it's not so much the prettiness and what it looks like and the design. That's something that comes the senior year. And one of the questions I think you asked, Kevin, is do any students change? And I've had a couple change, but for the most part, they pretty much stick with it. Once they've started it, we're still working on integrating it into our academic advising and things where they get more touch points on it. Right now, it's very heavy freshman and very heavy senior with a couple of in between. But we're hoping it's something they now will go to every semester. And then Dr. Karen asked a question. As an instructor, do you have a preference for any platforms? I do. Yeah, definitely. I find Wix to be the easiest to grade. Course networking is the most difficult for me to grade. Actually, pretty even with Google Sites, only because of the permissions on Google Sites. So oftentimes the student has put it in, but it's blocked. So I always tell students using Google Sites, they need to create a public folder for their ePortfolio and put everything they plan to put into that before they put it in their ePortfolio. So. And I see a few more questions in there.
Mark or Lisa, do you want to address Andrew? You had a great question about how do you spend time in instructing the building of the portfolio, the technical side, when you deal with multiple platforms?
Yeah, so, I look at it from the course I utilize this part of it in as a senior level right before they do their capstone experience. And again, it goes back to address your question, Andrew, if I'm looking at this properly. It's not about it's not us teaching them the technical aspects. They chose that, they have that, that's theirs. So here's what we would suggest, and what I do in my class to even anchor it further so I don't present a bias. I've brought in employers who are going to interview them and say, what are we looking for? And that's the flat out question. What are you looking for? And then the employer tells them right there, here's what I want to see if you're going to utilize an ePortfolio in the middle of a job interview or in the job interview process. So I personally, at least for me, I don't view the technical aspects as anything. That ship has long sailed. I get them at the senior year. They've decided they're working on it. My ask to them is how can they best express themselves and express their reflective nature and express learning, and in how they come up with that. I have not yet seen a technical element of this be a rate limiter to a student successfully, because it's also linked with a high impact practice inside the class. So not only do I teach a typical didactic class, but they're out in the community 2 afternoons a week. They do a lot of deep reflection. So it's a weekly investment on themselves of how they can express and articulate learning. So to me, it's truly a non-issue that they are using different platforms. It's never been a concern. Good question. Fair question.
Yeah, since we've implemented in 2016, I was very worried about the technology because I'm not tech savvy at all. But I have had 0 students ask me for help on how to create their ePortfolio. And I always tell, that's usually the number one, faculty are like, I don't really want to deal with that. We don't. I mean, students are smarter than us when it comes to technology. So that's not something I don't really explain at all on how to use it. We show them the rubric, we talk about the perfects, give them the assignment, the planning sheet, and then they create it. So,
Okay. And Kevin, to what next question might enlighten what some are trying to get at. We do spend dedicated time in class for peers to check in on each other's ePortfolios to advise. There are students, and there's a question earlier that asked you, any of your students arrive in class already familiar with the platform? It depends, not as much in the intro classes, definitely as seniors they do, but even in the intro classes I do. And I always ask them, when we do an in-class activity, do you mind anchoring a group, a peer group, and kind of helping coach, and we'll walk around to help support and connect people. And they're great at working together. They much rather have each other to navigate the technology than me, which is nice. But they do. But you do spend dedicated class time doing that.
One of the things we also did in the past in the first year seminars, if we have student mentors as a part of our instructional team, and we would ask the student mentor if they didn't have any portfolio to create one. And then they could also help the students. But I agree that the technology piece, don't even deal with it as a faculty member.
I want to move to IUPUI. Because our students are not nearly as well prepared as
no.
what you're letting on in terms of preparedness for this technology. They have trouble with our learning management system. I get emails about, I don't understand this assignment because they don't scroll to the bottom of the text box. So I'm a little surprised to hear, and I totally, let me preface this. I mean, I totally get e-portfolios are not about the technology, but I'm a little surprised to hear that you don't stumble over preparing the students for the enterprise. We have a lot of difficulty getting students to manage. And we're a Google campus, and so I'm not in favor of the platforms out in the public domain. And I get the comment, I think, from Rachel about, you know, they don't know how to upload documents because it's a Google product and blah, 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 blah. So I get a hiccup when it comes to that technology. But I'm surprised that, you know, you have no barriers when it comes around to students navigating these systems. You know, the XYZ, I don't know what generation we're on, you know, they know how to do two things: take pictures and post. And when it comes to these e-portfolio technologies, again, they have trouble with our Canvas page, you know. So I don't know, maybe they get this preparation before they get into your classrooms, but I find this to be a real barrier in terms of their levels of digital literacy.
It's a great point, Andrew, and it's not to that we don't have any, it's just how we help support. So so this is where that choice comes in. Let's give an example of Wix. So over the years in these working groups that dedicate class time, and I mean, we don't spend, you know, many days, but it's checkpoints throughout the semester. It's not due till the end of the semester. So we have, I would say in the intro class, maybe 4 times where we visit it and spend dedicated class time on it. And when we get in those peer groups, they're wonderful at finding those that aren't having trouble with it, finding Wix tutorials. Here's a great link to a Wix tutorial, how to drop in a video, how to put a link in, how to have, you know, artifacts the way you want them. And so that's what we're talking about. It usually takes care of itself before they have to come up to me and I look surprised and shocked and have to figure out another way to help them, which I do. But that's what's the joy of the peer mentoring and all the availability of tutorials out there in different platforms, at least for us.
I'll be quiet here. But one of the few advantages of Zoom for me the last year and a half has been being able to put students into breakout rooms where they do work with one another, you know, sometimes on the technology, sometimes working through assignments or whatever. And I don't disagree that students have more to offer one another than we capitalize on traditionally. And you know, I don't know how you assign students this way. You know, if you're lucky, by random assignment, you know, you get somebody who's proficient who can kind of help take the lead, you know. But the peer thing, yeah, I think is invaluable.
Let's see. Many college students are Gen Z. Gen Alpha. Thank you. Learn something. I keep getting called baby boomer and I object to
Thank you,
that.
Kevin.
I object to the baby boomer, not because I don't want to be one. I'm just not one. So they don't know that. Yeah. I think some on our own ePortfolio team here have been accused of that. I won't mention any names. But yeah. What other questions or comments or anything we can help with? Gen X is real. We're just small. Love it.
How many of your students arrive, especially in your first year students, arrive on campus already being familiar with the platform? And so that's a sort of a two-part question. How many are familiar with the platform? And two, of those who are familiar with the platform, how many decide to stick with that? I mean, you may not have exact numbers, but just a feel for that versus switch.
Lisa?
At the freshman level, I don't know of any students that have come in with an ePortfolio. I can't think of anyone who's like, oh, I already have that. In our early implementation, we had a few seniors that already had platforms, and most of them stuck with what they had. But as far as freshmen, I don't see a whole lot. And in terms of helping students choose a platform, maybe we don't get questions because I really emphasize when they're choosing a platform, if they need help with technology, to choose one of the two supported by UITS, because that way I'm not the tech expert. They contact UITS for the technical support. But I say, if you're pretty tech savvy, Wix has great tutorials as an option. And that's kind of, maybe that's why students maybe choose Google over Wix. I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe to follow up, maybe not necessarily arriving with ePortfolios, but with some familiarity, for example, as Steve pointed out, with Squarespace or something, because Wix looks, it advertises itself as a web building site. So they may have built a website, but they don't see that the connection between their website and an ePortfolio. So.
Correct. Maybe that's something we need to talk about. Yeah.
I always say it from a constructing point of view that it is your website, but that's not what we're not trying to build it to be a website, but it is your website about you and about your path and reflecting on it. So I try to connect those dots, but I have very few that do come in my freshman class or first year class. But I've had more than I thought I would switch through their 4 years. Not a ton, but I'm always asking those questions. Why do you choose the platform you use? And that's why I was always curious why there were so many that used Wix. And this is just anecdotal, but it was over and over, is I can do more with it. I can express myself more. I can, and I think Rachel alluded to that. I can have more, it's easier for me to drop in videos or links or experiences. I like the way it looks aesthetically. And so when they say that, that's no surprise why that's usually the one that they're picking when they have a choice. As far as ease of use, I know that's subjective. I had one senior that told me, everyone using Wix, I don't understand them, but he had an engineering background and he chose Google Sites. He says, I don't know what's wrong with my classmates, but I'm choosing Google. And I said, you know what, you can do that. It's your choice. To each his own.
Have we skipped over any questions in the chat? I'm trying to go back through. I know several came in kind of at the same time.
I don't see any, but I do want to address something that was always something of fear for me. And I think it's fearful. Maybe fearful is the wrong word. When you're first starting ePortfolios, is that assessment method. And Rachel's talked about it, and we've in past in the ABLE helped people with showing, and ABLE's helped us, and other sources have helped us how to assess. And I can tell you, having a large class, it has never been an issue with assessment. As I said, I enjoy it. The rubric that we use and the metrics, it's very clear. We're transparent with the students and showing them how the assignment is going to be assessed. And it's not labor intensive at all. So I know that a lot of groups starting out or individuals starting out using that was always some form of reluctance that how am I going to assess this? Anything else that we can help with or discuss?
I don't know. Rachel, can you share? Do you have the rubric to share? I don't know if people would want to see that or not. Hate to put you on the spot, Rachel.
I can look for it.
So does the IUPUI faculty use the same rubric?
Everyone teaching the first year experience course, I believe, does, and we have 3 faculty, but it's not required.
And this is just our department. Campus wide, no, not everybody uses the same rubric.
Okay, I found it. But I cannot share my screen, so.
Oh, wait,
It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
yeah,
Kevin's going to help us out with that.
I just fixed that.
Thank you.
Okay. Got it. All right, so this is the rubric that we use, and this is for our first year experience course. We do look at ePortfolio design and the navigation, but it's mainly looking at like the links aren't broken, things like that. This is their About Me section. And we also have, they have to include significant learning experiences. So several assignments throughout the course. This course used to do pretty heavy service learning. So we have like high impact practice on high impact practice on high impact practice in this course. But they could choose what they wanted to put in the ePortfolio. So a lot of them would put their digital storytelling assignment about their service learning experience. Each week they do Insta Snap a Tweet reflection. So they submit a picture and a caption less than whatever Twitter is, like 144 characters or what, I actually don't know what it is. And then they can include involvement on campus, whatever it is that they want to involve. And then these 3 words here will be changing to kind of align with our campus. I forget exactly what they are, but it's these 3. We're going to be editing this for this semester. A check, Rick.
Thanks, Rachel.
And in speaking to the different types of reflection, I think students enjoy, we've never done any like data collection on this, but I believe they enjoy the different types of reflection, the options that we give them, because some students don't love writing, but they can tell their story through a video or through that Insta Snap a Tweet that I just talked about, a 6-word memoir. So there's lots of different ways we ask students to reflect.
And to build on that real quick, to Rachel's point, some of us, when we teach, again, the course I have that I utilize this, and they're out in the community doing something a few afternoons a week. So, they've been at school all day. They've been in the community from 4 to 5:36 at night. They can get home and complete the reflection in real time on a video upload or an alternate form, and then maybe a different week they can write. But I agree with you. The beauty of, we offer choice early and often in this process. The platform, the reflection prompts, what they include. And I would just echo that it's, and they own it. And that's why I think a lot of the issues tend to get mitigated is they're not just checking a box that we gave unto them of the whole assignment. There's a lot of autonomy. And I think that promotes not only motivation, but access, equity. There's a lot of wins to how we've framed it over the years. A lot of lessons we've learned to get there, but I think that's the strength of it.
Another question. Sorry, can I ask another question?
Oh, absolutely. Please.
So I like seeing your rubric. I mean, these are complicated, right? evaluating these e-portfolios are complex. And we all know that. So I did notice the one criteria was the last one was student experiences. And I totally get a listing of activities, both curricular and co-curricular, that kind of contribute to the narrative that they're building. So here's the $20,000 question. How do you judge the depth of the reflection?
We have a separate reflection rubric that is one, I don't remember where we got it from, but it was maybe from AAC&U or an ABLE conference. Yeah.
From AAC&U.
Okay.
I also use, I lean, the way I evaluate the depth of this is I lean heavily on Patty Clayton and her deal model. And that can be applied a lot of different ways, not just on one. Absolutely.
Can one of the group share that one as well in the chat? I mean, I find that it's such an interest to me, and I haven't been in this business for a long time, but the juxtaposition, right, between e-portfolios and reflection is, as many of you have already shared, right, the mantra, right? And it's always been so interesting to me. And I stopped Terry Rhodes once in the hallway during an AAC&U meeting, and I said, Dr. Rhodes, there's no value rubric for reflection. And so we've all been working at different ways to try to capture that essence, that aroma of their success that is more intangible than tangible,
So I'm a biologist. I introduced reflection into a first year common experience class last spring. I had always been unhappy with the way that with my students' response to my request for reflection. And I actually went to our creative writing instructor who commonly uses reflection, and it was so helpful. And she basically gave me ideas, and then I used that to create the reflection prompts, and I went back to her with the prompts, and she helped edit them. And I loved the reflections, and I did not find them difficult to evaluate in terms of their depth. And that is the first time that's ever happened. And I attribute all of that to that advice I got from someone who has lots and lots of experience of of thinking about how to create that well. So, I think if you can find colleagues like that here, elsewhere, wherever, it can be really valuable, because I was bad at it before I got some help.
Hey, Steve, I think we are approaching time, I believe.
Yeah.
Are we getting close, Kevin?
Yeah, it's about 5 minutes left, so we can let the next group get set up. And while we have this moment, I'm going to put the link in the chat for folks to provide feedback about this session so that the speakers can make adjustments for the next time they do a conversation session like this. But yeah, there's room for more questions and idea sharing. Just wanted to put that out there.
I also put a couple other reflection rubrics that I've used in the past in the chat, along with the AAC&U rubrics. I put my email, and I'm sure that team would be willing to put theirs in there as well. If you have any questions, send us an email. We're happy to share things we've learned from our journey.
Well, and as we close, that might be a good kind of go around the horn for the four of you and say, like, what are some takeaways and what are some things that you're hoping to try that might continue building on the successes you've had?
I can start something through the AACNU ePortfolio Institute that just came to life this week is that for our project, we're going to create an ePortfolio. And I know Debbie, who's on this, does this for her classes. So I don't know if Debbie wants to put hers, if she doesn't mind sharing it in the chat with everybody. But I think it's a nice way to show students, like, through an ePortfolio, here's how you're going to be making an ePortfolio. Here's why we do this. So that's something that I'm, at first I was like, I don't think we need that. Now I'm kind of getting excited about it.
Again, I just go back to choice early and often, student choice. I really do. It may be uncomfortable, it may be daunting, but boy, you really can get students excited when they own something from beginning to end. I just, for me, that's a key tenet.
And I would, to follow up with that, keep the students at the center of all decisions that are being made. Because I think, and I don't want to speak badly of our campus, but I think decisions were made for what was easier for training purposes and not really what was best for the students. So I think as a team, if we keep students at the heart of this, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, just continuing to see what the students give us on their feedback and assessing these and looking at their growth. I think when we started having the seniors do them, that was really impactful for me to see, and I can bring their growth and share it with my intro level class. And I think the toughest thing for me, it's not tough, but it's always trying to show examples and I don't always do this verbally. I give them literature on why reflection and being a reflective practitioner is so helpful to you, not just important to an educator that you learn, but also how it helps them versus just let's get this done and let's make this nice for a job or for graduate school. But understanding as a reflective practitioner how you can intrinsically learn to love what you do and improve your learning and grow as a student, but also as a practitioner after school. So that's the thing that I continue to evolve, trying to get better at and helping them with that.
Great note to end on. Well, I'd like to thank Mark, Steve, and Lisa and Rachel by extension for all of your fantastic ideas, for sharing what you're doing at IUPUI.